Hello. This particular video is what I call a talk it through. The purpose of talk it throughs is to emulate what we would do in a classroom when I would try to model what it is that you're supposed to be doing. Most students find doing a references list for the first time to be a little bit confusing and daunting, but it needn't be if you take it step by step. It's really just a matter of being careful and following directions. So before I begin this video, what I want you to do is to make sure that you have accessed and printed out, or at least have them available for you on your computer, the articles that I put in the assignment sheet, because I'm going to be using those as a basis for this talk it through. Then you need to either have a piece of paper and a pen so that you can begin constructing your references list by hand, or you need to have an open document on the computer. Now I'm going to be moving very quickly because I only have a small window of time to create this video, but between steps you might want to hit pause so that you can move quickly, so you can move through creating the entries as we go along. Also, keep in mind that you have to understand what you're doing, because whereas I'm talking you through some of the entries, eventually you'll be doing this on your own. So if at any point you have any questions about why you're putting something in a particular place or why you're doing what you're doing, please don't hesitate to send me an email, or if you need additional help, please don't hesitate to ask for a conference. Okay, let's get started. Okay, the first article that I'm going to be dealing with is Jennifer Hagen's article. So you might want to isolate that on your computer so that you can take a look at it. Now, in APA format, or basically any format, but particularly in APA, there are 5 pieces of information that every entry has to have. It needs to have the author or the authors of that particular article. You need to have the date of the article. You need to have the title of the article, the title of the publication, and what I mean by the publication is either the newspaper, the magazine, or the website, and you need to have the URL. Now all of those pieces of information need to be included in an entry, and they need to be included in this order. If any of that information is missing, then that needs to be signaled with the ND or no title, that sort of thing. And you can find instructions for how to do that in the Al Purdue instructions for using APA format. But this should not be a problem for anything that I have assigned for you. Okay, so we're going to take a look at Jennifer Hagen, and the first thing that you want to do is you want to identify the important pieces of information. So on your article, you want to find the author. Keep in mind that the author could be at the top of the page, or it could be at the bottom of the page, or sometimes it's over at the side. Be particularly vigilant to make sure that there's not more than one. Now find the date of the publication. Once again, that could be at the top, it could be in the middle, it could be at the beginning. The title of the publication is almost always in the header at the top, and that's where you will find the URL as well. You can copy and paste that. Okay. All right, so now we're ready to write. Making sure that you have some place to do that. The first thing that I want you to do is on your page, I want you to write the author's last name, comma, first initial. Follow that by the date. Make sure that you start with the year, the month, and then the day. Sometimes they will not have a day, they'll only have a month, and that's okay. Now, if the month is anything except May, June, or July, you abbreviate it. You'll notice for Hagen that there are 2 dates. Always use the most recent date if they have to. That means that the article has been updated and you're reading the most updated article. Follow with the title of the article. Keep in mind that in APA format, the title of the article is lowercase letter. The only words that are capitalized is the first word of the title and any proper nouns, meaning names of people, places, and things. So Brock Turner is capitalized because it's a name, but other than that, it's lowercase letter. Now follow with the name of the publication, making sure that that is italicized. If you're writing it by hand, you can't italicize, so you're going to have to underline. And finally, you're going to include the URL. Now, once you have written your entry, now you need to make sure that the spacing is correct. Make sure that all of your lines are double spaced, and make sure that the second and subsequent lines are indented 5 spaces. I don't do that until the very end because I use the tab function. Okay, now we are ready for the next article. So we're going to start with Scott Herhold. So doing the same thing, find Herhold's article and start once again, last name, comma, first initial. Follow with the date. Coincidentally, it's on the same date as Hagen. Follow with the title, keeping in mind that only Brock Turner and Stanford are capitalized because those are proper nouns. Follow with the publication, once again in the Mercury News, and then follow with the URL. Now it's important that the publication and the URL are important because you can find Herhold's article other places. This was the particular one that I directed you to and the one that we used. Okay, find your next article, and the next article is going to be a little different because we are going to use the Brock Turner article. Oh, no, I lie. We're going to use Jeff Rossen. Find Rossen's article. Now you'll notice that I sent you a link to the PDF of that article. The reason for that is it was a blog post and it is no longer accessible, but it's important that you read this article, and you've used it in, earlier in the module. So you can still cut and paste the URL from that and treat it as though you found it on the internet. Okay, so you start with the author's last name first. Go to the date. Follow with the title, and you're going to notice that the title for this is a series of sentences. And so that's why you have the capital, the period, the capital, the period, the capital, the period. This is unusual for a title, but not so much for blogs. So you want to reproduce that. It's possible that you might say campus rape is no different than off-campus rape, and that would be the title itself, and that would be okay as well. Then you need the name of his blog, and you're going to italicize that. And then you use the URL. Now, once again, this is going to take you no place because it no longer is in existence, but it is a source that I wanted you to be aware of. Now we're going to go to something slightly different, so I want you to follow the link to Brock Turner's sentencing statement. This is a document from the cloud. And remember that when you're dealing with documents from the cloud, you have to sometimes look other places sometimes, and you have to use your critical thinking. So if you look at the document, you're going to see that it really doesn't have any author and it doesn't have any title page, but you know what you are looking at, and you know that primarily by looking in the URL. If it is the sentencing statement, then we know that it does have an author, even though the author is not written there, and so that author is Brock Turner, so that's the author you're going to want to start with. Then we know that we don't know exactly when he wrote it, the exact date. We do know the year, so in that case we would just put the year. Now it is a problem if you only put the year if there is an exact date, and you may guess, but keep in mind that I look things up, so I'm aware that you would only have the date here. Now you need a title. I know that there isn't a title, but we know what we are looking for, and so it would be the defendant statement, and we particularly know that because of the URL. And notice in the URL it tells us what the title is right here. And when I see .cloud up here in the URL, I'm going to understand why the information here is truncated. That's why that URL is so important. Once again, you can find the defendant statement reproduced in other articles, and that would be okay. But this is one that is a direct source. And then, of course, what you need to do is to make sure the second and subsequent lines are indented here. Okay. So as you will notice, now I have it correctly done, where you have the second and subsequent lines are indented. Now we're going to do one last one, and I want you to look at the article that is an editorial article from the Sacramento Bee. And you're going to notice that in this article there is no author. So what do you do about an article that has no author? Well, in that case, what you do is you start with the title of the article. Do not start with the publication. Start with the title of the article. So if you'll find the title and write that on your page. Now you're going to follow that with the date, and follow the date with the publication. So if you don't have an author, you have the title of the article, the date, and then the publication. And then finally, you follow with the URL. And make sure that the URL is hyperlinked, because then I can follow it directly as I'm reading your document, and it makes it much easier for me. Okay? Now, you have another source that I'm not going to walk you through. I'm going to let you do that one on your own. Once again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. Now that you have all of your entries written, you want to put them together in a references page. And as you do that, keep in mind that there are some rules for the references page. First of all, the references page has to be on its own individual page. You don't stick it at the bottom of your essay or your paragraph or whatever it is you're writing. It has its own page, and as its own page it has a title, and the title is references, and the title is centered. The margins for your page is 1 inch. So 1 inch from the top, you're going to center references. You won't bold it, you won't put it in all caps, you'll just write the word references and it will be centered. Then under that title, you're going to put all of your entries alphabetized by the author's last name. If an article doesn't have an author, you will alphabetize it by the title. Don't separate it out, just use the title as though it were an author. Make sure that you double space the document throughout. You don't single space your entries and then double space between them. It's just a straight double space throughout. Use 1 inch margins. Make sure your second and subsequent lines are indented. And then most important, and I can't stress this enough, save your document as a PDF before you submit it. If you use Google Docs or other word processing forms and you try to upload that to Canvas, the spacing will migrate. In other words, the formatting will look all strange when I read it. And you're going to lose points for that because the formatting is important. If you save it as a PDF, it takes a picture of it, it freezes it, and then the spacing or the formatting will remain consistent. So upload your document to Canvas as a PDF. When it's done, this is what it's going to look like. So you'll notice that you have your title here. You'll notice that all of your entries are alphabetized. This is why you want those second and subsequent lines to be indented 5 spaces, because if I'm looking for a source, I can very quickly scan and find the author's name. If you do it the other way, you have to read line for line, and it takes much longer to find a source and it's very awkward. So there's really a good reason for doing that. So make sure that your second and subsequent lines are indented. Make sure that you have double spaced because it's easier to find the information. And if they are hyperlinked, I can just click on those and go directly to the source if I want. Now, this is what your references page will look like. References page is going to be an important component not only of this assignment that you're turning in, but it's going to be an important component of all assignments. Good luck.